The transport ship trembled as it tore through the thick orange clouds of a forgotten world. Metal screamed under pressure, lights flickered, and the cockpit smelled of burnt wires and cold fear. Pilot Jax Wren, only 20 years old, gripped the flight controls tighter, knuckles white under his gloves. His call sign was Wren, and he was proud of it, the youngest pilot in the Coalition's outer fleet. But now, pride was useless. Atmospheric breach in Sector 5, his co-pilot, Marlowe, muttered. Sweat rolled down his temple. We shouldn't even be here. Jax forced a grin that didn't reach his eyes. Command says this route's clear. Minimal void activity. Minimal. Marlowe shot him a look. That means they're probably waiting to gut us somewhere. Outside, the storm flashed blue with lightning. Their ship, ECS Falcon, bucked under turbulence. The display screens glitched with static, showing ghost signals, strange shadows that flickered across the radar and disappeared. Jax leaned forward. You see that? Don't say it, Marlowe whispered. Don't jinx us. But it was too late. The ship's alarm shrieked, a sharp, metallic scream that meant only one thing. Decloaking signature detected. A massive, dark shape emerged from the clouds, a void cruiser, black as glass, its hull pulsing with eerie light. The first plasma bolt struck before Jax could even shout. The cockpit exploded with fire and sound. Sparks rained from the ceiling, and smoke filled the air. Evasive, Jax yelled, fighting the controls. Mayday, this is ECS Falcon, we're under. The transmission died as another blast ripped through the fuselage. The world spun in chaos. Panels burst open, wires snapped, and the stars turned into streaks of white. The ship fell like a dying bird. Marlowe's scream was lost in the noise. We're going down. The ground rushed up in a blur of green and gold. The last thing Jax saw before blacking out was the forest canopy rising to meet them. And then, nothing. When he woke, there was no sky. No sound of engines, no co-pilot. Only silence. Then, whispers. Not real voices, but something inside his head. He tried to move, but pain lanced through him. Something heavy clamped around his face, cold, metallic, alive. His vision was gone, replaced by strange patterns of light and shadow. The thing spoke in tones he couldn't understand, like static mixed with breathing. He tried to tear it off, but his arms wouldn't move. His body wasn't his anymore. Panic surged. Hello. His own voice echoed back, muffled and distorted. A pulse of heat shot through his skull, and his memories began to slip away. His first flight test, his mother's laugh, the smell of rain back on Earth. One by one, the moments drained out of him, stolen. That was when he realized what it was. A void idol mask. He'd heard rumors, tech that didn't just kill, but fed. It stole your mind, your soul, everything you were. The void used them to map human thoughts, to fuel their star drives. People called it the tail eater, because once it took your memories, you became nothing more than a whisper inside their machines. Time dissolved. Hours, days, maybe years, he couldn't tell. He existed as a fading echo, trapped between thoughts and silence. Sometimes he felt his heartbeat. Sometimes he wasn't sure he had one. Guards passed by, their language a hiss of clicks and tones that made his head ache. He tried to speak once, to beg, but the mask swallowed his words. One day, or maybe one lifetime later, he whispered to himself, the words trembling out through static. I'll be like this forever. But fate had other plans. A shock wave shook the cell. Then came another, closer this time. Shouts. Gunfire. The world trembled. The wall in front of him exploded inward, showering the room with dust and light. For the first time in endless darkness, Jax saw something through the mask's haze. A silhouette framed in fire and smoke. Slender. Fast. Alien. She stepped through the wreckage, armor cracked, but eyes bright, like twin suns. Her weapon stayed trained on him. Well, she said, her voice low and steady. Didn't expect to find a human still breathing. Through the static, Jax tried to smile. Trust me, he croaked, neither did I. And somewhere deep inside the mask, for the first time in years, a single spark of data flickered, a heartbeat made of light. Dust hung in the air like golden mist as the figure stepped closer. The light from the broken wall framed her in a strange glow, half soldier, half shadow. Her armor was scuffed and burned, but her movement was precise, every step balanced like a dancer's. Jax tried to speak again, but the mask covering his face distorted his words into static noise. The alien raised her weapon slightly, eyes narrowing, ready to shoot if he moved. Then, slowly, she lowered it. "Human?" she asked cautiously. Her voice was melodic but carried a metallic edge, like a language not made for human throats. "I didn't think any of your kind survived this sector." Jax shook his head weakly. "Survive might be a stretch," he managed to say through the distortion. "More like malfunctioning." To his surprise, she smiled. A quick, sharp curve of her lips that seemed out of place in the chaos. "You've still got humor. That's rare." She stepped closer and crouched down beside him. The badge on her shoulder showed a faded symbol, Outclan. The mark of those cast out from the Void's hierarchy. Exiles, scavengers, rebels. Her eyes scanned the device, fused to his face. "Eidolon unit. Model 7. They don't use these anymore." She sounded almost sad. "You must have been trapped for years." Jax tried to move his arms, but his muscles refused to obey. "You know how to take it off?" "Maybe." She reached into a side pouch and pulled out a small device shaped like a crystal shard etched with alien runes. "My mentor taught me the old languages before he was executed. This one's a decryptor." She looked at him seriously. "It could free you, or fry your brain in half a second." Jax let out a weak laugh that sounded more like static. "After 4 years of this thing eating my memories, I'll take those odds." She hesitated, then nodded. "You humans are always too brave for your own good." She pressed the device against the side of his mask. A bright pulse shot through the room. Jax screamed, his mind flooded with white-hot pain. The mask resisted, tightening like claws digging into his skull. The alien gritted her teeth and pushed harder, muttering in her native tongue. Then, with a sharp crack, the mask shuddered. A seam opened along its surface. For the first time in years, Jax felt air on his skin. He gasped like a drowning man surfacing from deep water. The alien leaned back, panting. "It's not completely off," she said, watching the flickering lights on the mask. "But it's weakened. It won't drain you anymore." Jax blinked as the world came into focus. Blinding light, broken walls, alien smoke curling through the cracks. He looked at her properly now. Her skin had a faint blue tint, her eyes golden and alive. "Name's Jax Wren. Pilot. Coalition. Lyra," she replied quietly. "Outclan scavenger. And apparently, your savior." He smiled faintly under the cracked edge of the mask. "Remind me to thank you, if we get out of here alive." Alarm screamed somewhere deep within the complex. Lyra stood and scanned the ceiling as red lights began flashing. "You're lucky I arrived when I did. My raid team planted charges across the energy core. In a few minutes, this whole facility will go up." "Perfect timing," Jax muttered, struggling to stand. His legs trembled. Lyra moved fast, slipping her arm under his to support him. He felt small currents of warmth from her skin, different, but comforting. "Can you walk?" she asked. "Barely," he admitted. "But I'll try." They began moving through a smoke-filled corridor, walls glowing with emergency glyphs. The floor vibrated beneath them as distant explosions shook the base. Jax's vision flickered. Strange symbols appeared inside the mask's half-dead interface. Lines, coordinates, arrows pointing left and right. "Wait," he said. "It's showing me something." Lyra frowned. "What?" "Paths, shortcuts. Escape routes. It's helping me." "That's impossible," she said quickly. "The Eidolon only takes. It doesn't give." Jax looked at her through the fractured display. "Maybe this one's different. Maybe it likes you." Her golden eyes met his for a second. Something flickered between them. Uncertainty, connection, or maybe fate. They turned left, following the glowing path projected across the wall. Sirens echoed. Fire poured from a nearby corridor. Lyra fired her weapon, dropping 2 void guards before they could react. The scent of ozone filled the air. "Not bad," Jax said, coughing through the smoke. "Stay focused," she snapped. "We're not safe yet." But she smiled as she said it. As they moved deeper, Jax realized something unsettling. The mask wasn't just showing escape routes anymore. It was feeding him more data, codes, even pieces of Lyra's voice echoing inside his mind. It was linking them somehow. Lyra didn't notice, but Jax did. He could sense her pulse, her emotions, a flicker of fear, then determination. The connection was real, and growing stronger with every step. Somewhere behind them, The last explosion shook the base like thunder. "Run!" Lyra shouted. And together, half human and half exile, they sprinted toward the unknown light ahead, while the dying fortress burned behind them. The corridor shook like a dying beast. Metal screamed. Sirens howled. Every alarm in the facility was blaring at once. Lyra dragged Jax forward, her arm locked around his waist as fire licked the walls. The ground quaked beneath them, and somewhere far below, an explosion ripped through the lower decks. Jax's body was weak. Years without movement had turned his muscles into stone and pain. But something deeper kept him going, the raw instinct to survive. "Where are we heading?" he shouted over the noise. "Main hangar," Lyra yelled back. "If we're lucky, there's still a transport left that hasn't been destroyed." "Lucky?" Jax coughed, nearly tripping over debris. "That's not my specialty lately." They turned a corner, nearly colliding with two Void soldiers. Their armor shimmered like liquid glass, their weapons humming with sickly blue energy. Lyra reacted instantly. She fired twice, the plasma bolts striking one in the chest and the other in the throat. Both fell, twitching. "Keep moving," she ordered, smoke curling around her shoulders. Jax stumbled after her, blinking through the haze. The broken half of his mask still flickered faintly. Strange lights danced across his vision, not random anymore, but organized, alive. The mask was showing him a map. "Left," he said suddenly. "There's a maintenance shaft that bypasses the next security gate." Lyra frowned. "How do you?" "The mask. It's giving me directions." She stared at him in disbelief. "It's void tech, Jax. It doesn't help humans." "Maybe it doesn't know I'm human anymore," he said darkly. Lyra hesitated, then nodded. "Fine. Lead the way." They slipped into the side passage, crawling through narrow tunnels filled with heat and static. Every sound echoed, metal groans, distant gunfire, and the deep hum of collapsing power cores. The tunnel opened into a wide chamber, the main hangar. Rows of ships, some burning, others half destroyed, filled the space. The air shimmered with energy discharges. Lyra spotted a small interceptor at the far end, compact, fast, built for hit-and-run missions. "That one," she said, pointing. Jax nodded. "Let's pray it still flies." They started across the hangar floor when the ground cracked open behind them. A massive Void enforcer climbed out, its body wrapped in black armor, eyes glowing red. It raised a plasma blade as long as a man. "Go," Jax shouted. You'll run." Lyra snapped, grabbing his arm and pulling him forward. The enforcer lunged. Lyra spun, firing her weapon, hitting it twice in the chest. The blast barely slowed it down. It roared, charging again. "Mask!" Jax yelled. "Show me something useful." The interface blinked once, then projected a glowing red mark on the enforcer's side, right where its armor plates joined. "Weak point detected." "Lyra," he shouted. "Left flank, under the shoulder joint." Without hesitation, she dove, rolled, and fired. The bolt struck true. The creature screamed as its armor imploded, collapsing in a shower of sparks and smoke. Lyra turned to him, panting. "How did you?" "The mask told me," Jax said, voice shaking. "I think it's adapting to us." She stared at him, then smiled faintly. "Remind me to thank your parasite later." They reached the interceptor. Lyra entered a code into the side panel, the door hissing open. The cockpit smelled like ozone and dust. "Get in," she said. "You can fly, right?" "Born to." Jax slid into the pilot's seat, his hands trembling as they touched the familiar controls. The ship came alive beneath his fingers, lights flickering to life. Lyra strapped into the co-pilot's chair. "Engines. Still functional," Jax muttered, his voice steadier now. "Minimal shields. Half fuel. We'll have to make it count." Outside, the hangar trembled. The self-destruct siren began a steady countdown. 15 minutes. "Not a lot of time," Lyra said. "Then we'd better make it interesting." The engines roared. Flames and debris filled the hangar as the ship lifted off. Jax guided it toward the exit bay. The massive hangar doors began to close automatically. "Faster," Lyra shouted. Jax slammed the throttle forward. The ship streaked toward the narrowing gap. The hull scraped the edge of the door as they burst through, pieces of metal flying behind them. They were free, for now. Below them, the facility erupted in a storm of fire and light, collapsing into itself like a dying star. The shockwave slammed into the interceptor, tossing it through the sky. Jax fought the controls, cursing under his breath. Hold together, sweetheart. Come on. The ship steadied. Silence followed, broken only by their breathing and the faint hum of engines. Lyra leaned back in her seat, glancing at him. You did it. Jax managed a shaky laugh. You say that like we didn't just outrun an exploding base. She smiled, small real. Maybe you humans aren't as fragile as we thought. He looked out at the burning sky, the half-broken mask still flickering with ghostly light on his face. We're fragile, he said softly. We just refuse to break. And somewhere deep inside the device, new symbols flickered to life. Lines of data neither of them understood. The mask wasn't done with him yet. The stars stretched like cold fire across the void as Jax's stolen interceptor drifted through the dark. The burning planet behind them was now nothing more than a fading orange scar in space. Inside the cockpit, silence filled the air, the kind of silence that came only after survival. Lyra sat in the co-pilot's seat, her armor scorched, eyes fixed on the empty expanse ahead. You're losing blood, she said quietly. Jax looked down. A cut ran along his arm, dried crimson against his sleeve. He shrugged. I've had worse. She gave him a look, part disbelief, part amusement. Humans. Always pretending pain means nothing. He smirked faintly. It doesn't mean nothing. It just means we're still alive. For a long moment, the only sound was the low hum of the engines. The half-dead mask still clung to the side of Jax's face, its lights faint but pulsing, like a heartbeat. He tapped its edge nervously. Still stuck? Lyra asked. Yeah. It won't let go completely, he said. Feels like it's thinking. She frowned. Thinking. Jax hesitated. Like it's trying to talk to me, but in pictures, not words. It keeps showing coordinates, system charts, like it wants to go somewhere. Lyra leaned closer. Where? He shook his head. No idea. But I'm not taking directions from a parasite. Before Lyra could respond, a sharp beep sliced through the silence. The radar lit up, 3 bright signatures at the edge of the system. Void ships, Jax muttered. They tracked us faster than expected. Lyra's expression hardened. They shouldn't have. Not unless. She stopped, eyes widening. Unless what? Jax asked. Unless he is leading them, she whispered. My father. Jax blinked. The general? The one who built the Atlas project, she finished, her voice low. He'll chase us to the edge of the galaxy. He won't rest until he has that mask, or me. Jax tightened his grip on the controls. Then let's make him work for it. He banked the ship sharply, steering them toward a nearby asteroid belt. Massive rocks drifted in slow motion, colliding and breaking apart in clouds of dust and light. Lyra frowned. You plan to hide in there? Hide. Jax grinned. No. Hunt. The interceptor plunged into the maze of asteroids. Fragments of light and shadow danced across the cockpit. Behind them, the void cruisers followed, sleek, black, deadly. Jax cut the main engines. The ship drifted, silent, like a ghost. The radar pings vanished. Engines offline? Lyra asked. Exactly, he said. We let the rocks block their scanners. Then, we use this. He held up a small metal sphere he'd pulled from the console. Emergency beacon. I'll set it to transmit our ship's ID and toss it into the debris field. She nodded slowly. You're using bait. Hunters love bait, he said with a grin. Especially when they think it's scared prey. He activated the beacon and hurled it into the drifting debris. The small device spun away, blinking faintly before disappearing behind an asteroid. Seconds later, the void cruisers turned sharply, changing course toward it. Lyra leaned forward, watching the scanners. They took it. Jax exhaled, leaning back. Good. Gives us time to breathe. She looked at him, her expression softer now. You humans are strange. Always fighting impossible odds, laughing at danger. He smiled faintly. We laugh because the alternative is screaming. Her golden eyes met his, and for a brief moment, the war, the chase, the pain, all of it faded. There was only quiet and the glow of her skin reflecting off the cockpit glass. Why did you help me? He asked suddenly. You could have left me there. She hesitated. Because I saw what they did to you. To your people. And because, her voice dropped. Because I was once the one giving the orders. Jax turned toward her, surprise flashing in his eyes. I was trained in the Void military, she admitted. Before I was exiled. Before I learned what we were really doing. They told us humans were dangerous, that your memories were fuel, not life. But when I saw the truth, I ran. She turned away, staring at the stars. Now I'm hunted by my own kind. Jax was silent for a moment, then said softly, maybe being hunted means you did the right thing. Lyra smiled faintly, a sad, tired smile. Or maybe it just means I chose the harder path. Outside, a faint tremor shook the ship. Jax checked the scanner. They've launched fighters, he said. Fast ones. How long until they find us? Minutes. Lyra straightened in her seat. Then we don't wait. Set a course for neutral space. Outpost Helios. My people won't risk a full assault there. Jax nodded, pulling the controls toward the new coordinates. The engines hummed to life again, the ship sliding out of the asteroid field like a shadow. As the stars blurred into motion, Lyra glanced at him. Why do you keep fighting, Jax? Even after everything they took from you. He smiled, eyes on the endless dark ahead. Because that's what humans do. We fight even when the universe tells us not to. She studied him for a long second, her eyes glowing softly in the dim light. Maybe that's why they fear you, she whispered. He turned slightly, their gazes locking through the reflection on the glass. Let them. Outside, the stars shifted as they crossed into neutral space. Behind them, the void fleet fanned out across the asteroid field, chasing shadows that weren't there. For the first time in years, Jax felt a flicker of something he thought he'd lost forever. Hope. And deep within the half-dead mask still clinging to his face, a faint light blinked, as if it, too, had begun to believe. The engines hummed softly as the stolen interceptor glided toward Outpost Helios, a massive ring station orbiting a pale blue gas giant. Once a neutral trade hub, now a rusted shadow of its former glory. Its surface was patched with mismatched metals, like an old scar that refused to heal. Jax guided the ship toward the docking lanes, trying to ignore the tremor in his hands. It had been hours since their escape from the asteroid belt, but his nerves hadn't settled. Lyra sat beside him, her expression unreadable as she studied the radar. Too many ships, she said quietly. Freighters, patrols, security drones. Helios never had this much traffic. Maybe it's rush hour, Jax said, forcing a grin. Lyra didn't smile. No. This is a lockdown pattern. Jax's grin faded. You think they're waiting for us? She nodded. Or for the mask. Her eyes flicked toward the half-broken device still attached to Jax's face. Its lights pulsed faintly, reflecting off the cockpit glass. Jax touched the metal, his fingers tracing the scars it had left. We can't just toss it out the airlock, can we? It's too valuable, Lyra replied. That mask contains data, void schematics, encryption codes, even neural patterns they'd kill to protect. If we deliver it to the Coalition, it could shift the entire war. Assuming we survive long enough to hand it over. The comm crackled suddenly. A voice filled the cabin, distorted but firm. Unidentified vessel, transmit authorization codes. Docking clearance required. Lyra activated the console, sending a coded response from a stolen void transponder. This is Merchant Vessel Vetra 9. Carrying trade goods for Outpost Helios, Bay 12. A long pause. Then, proceed to Docking Bay 17. Be advised, all arrivals subject to enhanced security screening. Lyra's face tightened. Enhanced screening, she whispered. That means they're checking every passenger. Wonderful, Jax muttered. Guess we're about to become very popular. He guided the ship into the station's docking corridor. The magnetic clamps latched onto the hull with a metallic thud. As the engines powered down, the silence felt heavier than space itself. Lyra unstrapped and stood, checking her weapon. We'll need to move fast once we're inside. Security will scan every ship within minutes. Jax rose too, his legs still stiff from the long flight. Any ideas where to run? There's a maintenance network under the docking bays, she said. Smugglers use it to move contraband without passing checkpoints. If we reach it, we can vanish into the lower decks. Sounds like home. She smirked slightly. You humans always make jokes when you should be terrified. Yeah, Jax said, pulling on a stolen void cloak. That's how we stay sane. The airlock hissed open. Warm light and stale air poured in. The docking bay was crowded. Mechanics, traders, and security drones buzzing through the haze. Jax and Lyra moved quickly, blending in. Then came the announcement. Attention all personnel. A voice boomed across the bay. Outpost Helios is now under temporary void supervision. All travelers must submit to identity verification. Lyra froze. Void supervision, she whispered. He's here. Jax's stomach dropped. Your father. She nodded grimly. General Krell. If he's taken command of Helios, this entire station is a trap. As soldiers began sweeping the area, Lyra grabbed Jax's hand. This way. They slipped between two cargo crates, ducking into a narrow service corridor. The hum of machinery grew louder as they descended deeper into the station skeleton. Pipes and cables covered the walls, dripping condensation. This feels too easy, Jax said. That's because we're not safe yet, Lyra replied. Helios has surveillance drones everywhere. If we stay near heat vents, they won't detect our life signs. They moved through the twisting tunnels, emerging onto a lower deck, the market tier. It was chaos. Dozens of species moved through cramped stalls, bartering goods, shouting prices. The air was thick with the scent of oil, smoke, and alien spices. Stay close, Lyra murmured. Blend in. Jax pulled his hood lower, keeping his face turned away from the lights. Any plan beyond blending? Find someone who can get us off this station, she said. Preferably someone who doesn't ask questions. They passed a stall selling recycled ship parts. A gruff trader looked up as they approached. You looking to buy or vanish? He asked in a deep, gravelly tone. Vanish, Lyra said simply. He nodded toward a door behind the stall. Maintenance access. That'll cost you. Before she could answer, a commotion erupted across the market. The loudspeakers crackled again, but this time, the voice wasn't automated. It was cold, commanding, and all too familiar. This is General Krell of the Void Armada, the voice announced. 2 fugitives have entered this station. A human male and an outclan female. They are traitors to the Compact and enemies of order. Any who assist them will share their fate. Jax and Lyra locked eyes. Guess blending in isn't an option anymore, Jax muttered. Lyra drew her weapon. No, but fighting our way out always is. They sprinted into the maintenance corridor as security sirens screamed behind them. The floor rumbled under the weight of incoming troops. The market dissolved into chaos, shouts, alarms, and the stampede of terrified civilians. As they ran, Jax glanced at Lyra. Her eyes glowed brighter than ever, not with fear, but fury. Your father's here in person, he said. Why risk it? Because he doesn't want the mask, she said through clenched teeth. He wants you. Me? Jax blinked. Why? Because you survived it, she said. And that means you're something the Void doesn't understand, something they can't control. Behind them, the echoes of soldiers' boots thundered closer. Lyra raised her weapon, firing at the ceiling. The blast brought down a cloud of smoke and debris, sealing the corridor. Move, she shouted. They disappeared into the darkness below, hunted, cornered, but not defeated. As they descended into the shadows of Outpost Helios, Jax realized something new. For the first time since the war began, the Void was afraid. And that meant humanity still had a fighting chance. The lower decks of Outpost Helios groaned like an old beast as Jax and Lyra descended through the maze of rusted ladders and dim corridors. The smell of ozone, oil, and recycled air thickened with every level. The lights flickered above them, some white, some sickly green, casting their faces in broken shadows. They had escaped the market chaos, but not the hunt. The sound of metallic footsteps echoed through the tunnels above. The Void troops were closing in. Jax stopped to catch his breath, leaning against the wall. They're sweeping every level. We can't keep running forever. Lyra checked her weapon's charge cell. We won't. We'll end this. Jax looked at her, frowning. You mean confront him? She nodded. My father only respects strength. If we keep hiding, he'll corner us eventually. But if we face him directly, you're talking about walking straight into a trap, Jax interrupted. Her golden eyes met his. Maybe. But a trap can be turned on its maker, if we're smarter. He gave a humorless laugh. Good thing humans specialize in stupid plans that work. The mask on Jax's face flickered faintly, casting ghostly symbols across the walls. Lyra glanced at it. That thing, it's active again. Jax touched the edge of it. It's been pulsing since we hit Helios. Almost like it's sensing him, your father. Of course it is, she said quietly. He designed the Atlas network. Every mask is connected to his central AI core. If he's here, the mask knows it. Then we can use that. She frowned. Use it how? Jax's eyes gleamed faintly in the half-light. We feed the connection false data. Make the mask think we're surrendering, then turn it into a virus. If I can plug it into one of their tactical hubs, it might overload his systems from the inside. Lyra stared at him. That's suicide. He shrugged. So is waiting around. For a moment, she said nothing. Then, slowly, she smiled. A sharp, dangerous smile that reminded him she wasn't human either. All right, pilot. Let's gamble with death. They moved through the access tunnels until they reached a wide chamber filled with humming conduits. Old maintenance bots lay rusted along the walls. Above them, the station's core pulsed with faint red light, like the heartbeat of some dying creature. A low roar of applause filled the hall. Some clapped, others bowed their heads. Humanity had not only survived the scandal, it had rewritten the law. Lyra turned to Rook, her lips curving into a small smile. You just made half the galaxy your allies, and the other half your enemies. Good, Rook replied with a grin. Keeps things interesting. After the ceremony, the two of them stood on the observation deck overlooking the planet below. The stars hung like frozen fire, and the reflected light from the council spire glowed behind them. So, Lyra said, leaning on the railing. What happens now? Peace isn't exactly exciting work. Rook slipped his hands into his coat pockets. There's no such thing as peace. Not really. Just the quiet moments between storms. And I think another one's coming. Lyra tilted her head. You mean the quiet forge? He nodded. Sales network may be gone, but someone built those chorus nodes. Someone still profiting from chaos. She looked at him for a long moment. And you're going to hunt them. We're going to hunt them, he corrected. She smiled faintly. Then I suppose our pact isn't finished. Rook turned to face her, the glow of the stars catching the scar on his jaw. The pact isn't just protection anymore. It's a promise. You and me against the noise. She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. You humans never do anything halfway, do you? Only when it matters. Outside the viewport, a patrol fleet drifted past, 1,000 lights cutting across the dark. Somewhere beyond them, the remnants of the quiet forge stirred, rebuilding in secret. But for now, in this brief stillness, humanity stood not as prey or pawn, but as proof that even in a galaxy of titans, one fragile world could still roar loud enough to be heard. Rook looked out at the endless expanse of stars and smiled. Let them come, he said quietly. We've got the truth on our side. And with that, the stars themselves seemed to burn a little brighter, as if the universe had finally decided to listen. The corridors of Outpost Helios burned like veins of molten metal. Fire rolled through the decks, bursting from cracked bulkheads as systems overloaded. The hum of dying reactors became a deep, constant roar. Every light flickered red. Every alarm screamed. Through the chaos, Jax and Lyra ran. He half stumbled, half dragged himself forward, one hand gripping the wall, the other clutching the rail of a descending passage. Lyra moved beside him, her blue-tinted skin illuminated by the emergency lights, her breathing ragged. Keep moving, she shouted over the roar. Jax coughed through the smoke, pain flaring behind his eyes. Remind me to never blow up a military station again. Lyra smirked despite the chaos. You humans and your dramatics. The deck shuddered under them as another explosion tore through the lower levels. Sparks rained from the ceiling. A pressure door sealed behind them with a hiss, trapping the screams of void soldiers on the other side. They reached the hangar, or what was left of it. Flames danced across the floor, licking the shattered hulls of ships. Only one craft remained intact. A small, sleek command shuttle, black and silver, its hull marked with the insignia of General Krell. Lyra's eyes narrowed. His personal shuttle. Then let's borrow it, Jax said. Consider it payback. Together, they sprinted across the hangar. Alarms blared louder. The station's computer voice began its final countdown. Warning, core breach in 90 seconds. Jax jumped into the pilot's seat, his hands trembling but sure. The console came alive with red glyphs. She's locked to his command code. Lyra slid into the co-pilot's seat, fingers flying across the control panel. Not for long. She connected a small device, the same alien cipher she had once used to free Jax from the mask. Come on, come on. The console blinked once. Then again. The glyphs shifted to green. Jax grinned. You're incredible. I know, she said breathlessly, smiling despite everything. The engines roared to life. The shuttle lifted off the deck just as the floor cracked apart beneath them. Chunks of steel and fire plunged into the void. They shot out of the hangar in a trail of smoke and flame, the pressure wave from the explosion hurling them forward like a bullet. Behind them, Outpost Helios tore itself apart, a blinding sphere of fire and debris lighting up the stars. For a long moment, neither spoke. The only sound was the hum of the engines and the ragged rhythm of their breathing. Then Lyra whispered, "It's over." Jax looked out at the expanding cloud of light. "No, it's just begun." She turned to him, puzzled. "What do you mean?" He tapped the mask, now lying on the console, cracked, inert, but faintly glowing at the edges. "When I connected it to the station, I saw something. Coordinates buried deep in its system. Not void territory. Something older." Lyra's brow furrowed. "Older?" "Yeah," he said. "Like the place where the first Atlas mask was made. The source." Silence filled the cockpit. The idea hung in the air like static. "If that's true," she said slowly, "then your war and mine are just the surface of something far bigger." Jax nodded. "And someone didn't want us to find it." He leaned back, exhaustion finally catching up to him. His face was pale, but his eyes were alive again, the haunted emptiness replaced with something fierce. "I spent 4 years trapped inside that machine," he said quietly. "It stole everything, my memories, my hope. But somehow it gave me this." He looked at her. "A reason to fight again." Lyra smiled faintly. "You humans find hope in the strangest places. That's what makes us dangerous," he said with a grin. She laughed softly, a sound rare and genuine. Then her expression softened. "When we reach Coalition space, what happens to us?" He met her gaze, his hand brushing hers on the console. "We tell them the truth. We show them what the void is hiding." And then, his lips curved. "We decide what to do next." She tilted her head. "Together?" "Together," he said simply. Outside, the last fragments of the station drifted apart like dying embers. The shuttle glided through the field of debris, silent and graceful. The light from the gas giant reflected off the hull, painting the cockpit in shades of gold. Lyra leaned back, her eyes on the stars. "My people will never forgive me for this." "Then they'll have to get in line," Jax replied. She smiled again, then pointed at the navigation screen. "There. That's the coordinate set you pulled from the mask." Jax squinted at the display. The numbers burned across the screen, a sector far beyond known space, marked only by one cryptic void symbol. "Looks empty," Lyra said. He smiled, that reckless pilot grin she was starting to recognize. "That's what makes it interesting." She shook her head. "You really are insane." "Probably," he said, pushing the throttle forward. "But tell me you're not curious." Lyra hesitated, then smirked. "Curious enough." The engines flared brighter, and the stars stretched into long ribbons of light as the shuttle jumped into faster-than-light travel. Behind them, the remnants of Helios flickered once, then disappeared into the void. Ahead, the unknown awaited, dark, vast, and filled with the promise of discovery and danger. Jax glanced at Lyra, his voice quiet but certain. "They thought they could trap me forever. But now I know better." She looked at him, eyes glowing softly. "What do you know, human?" He smiled. "You can't cage the species that invented rebellion." The stars swallowed them whole. And somewhere in the cold silence between galaxies, the cracked mask on the console pulsed once. Faint, but unmistakable. Something had awakened.